Hi, I first wanted to introduce myself. My name is Cassidy. I have been in the BSU EdTech Master's Program for the last 2 years, and I am just getting ready to finish and turn in this portfolio. A little about myself. I'm originally from Orange County, California. Grew up and was raised there, enjoyed a lot of the sun, the beach, and the great weather. I moved out to Utah to attend Brigham Young University, where I went for about 3 years and graduated there. I also had the opportunity to live abroad for about 2 years and to live in Brazil and learn to speak Portuguese. Eu falo português. I've also been teaching for about the past 6 years. I was lucky to get a job out of BYU and to get place where I did my student teaching at Timpview High School in Provo, Utah, right next to Brigham Young University. So I've been there for the last 6 years. I have done student government for the past 5 years. I have taught such classes as AP World, regular world history, regular U.S. history, and honors U.S. history, and student government. And I've been very excited with my time there. I decided to do a master's in educational technology because I've always loved technology. I've used a lot of it in my classroom, and I have been so impressed with how much I've learned through this program. I thought I knew a lot about technology in the classroom, but I have learned so much that I've already implemented into my classroom and that I'm excited to use in the future. So that's a little bit about me. I like to do photography and travel on the side, and that's been a great thing with the teacher's schedule of having the summers off. So I'm going to take you through a little tour of my reflection of these past 2 years and what I've learned and what I've gotten out of the program. So hope you enjoy. One of the first things that I think I learned the most from the BSU program was this ability to really adapt to the learning strategies of our students. I think I've noticed, especially these last 6 years, that education has completely changed from when I was in high school to how the kids learn today. I never even had a cell phone in high school, and I was in high school about 10 years ago. It wasn't that different. But today the kids are used to a technology-based learning. That's how they interact with each other, that's how they report to each other, that's how they use social media, that's how they email, and that's what they're used to. And unfortunately, education has taken a longer time to catch up to what the students are used to. And that is one of the things that I've gotten out of this program the most, was the ability to see that the students need to learn with what they're comfortable with. One of the things that I noticed the most was the learning strategies of the students. And in our first few courses, we talked about the different strategies the learners have, whether it be auditory or visual or contextual or even tangible. I have noticed the most that with visual and auditory needs of my students, that they are very met by using technology, but we don't often use those to our resources. Sometimes I find myself just using technology to answer emails from parents or students, and I've had a class blog, which has been nice, but I haven't really made my course interactive. And so I've decided through this course that I want to use more visual skills. Some of the projects, and I made a list for myself, of the things that helped our visual learners more were the YouTube class I took. I loved the YouTube class. I felt that I got a lot out of that, and I didn't even know all these things that you could use YouTube for, whether it be editing your video, creating video vlogs for students, instructions and tutorials. One of my favorite assignments was the typography assignment, where I showed the students how to create their own typography assignment and then do a time-lapse video. And I think that was one of the most rewarding projects for me, because I saw the ability that my students have to see my instructions not just once in the classroom, but repeated on YouTube again and again. And if they didn't hear it the first time or get it, or maybe missed class or were sick, that they could go back and rewatch and rehear for my visual and auditory learners once more the instructions. That alone, I think, was such a little thing that I could apply to my teaching, but made a world of difference in my classroom. I think of all the visual projects like the Holocaust Remix video, the tutorials I mentioned, the blogs, and things like that that help my students. For my auditory learners, creating instructions over my PowerPoints was a simple move. To use audio skills and to dub over my PowerPoints that I've used, maybe difficult concepts that they need to hear once or twice to understand. I thought videos with captions and instructions was one of the smallest things, but made the biggest difference in my classroom. So I think the first thing that I really saw was that the learners and their abilities and their characteristics, whether they be visual, auditory, contextual, or tangible that they needed to be met, and that I wasn't meeting that in a traditional classroom, so I needed to adjust. And some of the classes, including the YouTube class that I mentioned, really helped me see that this can be met by using simple devices that we're all familiar with. So that's the first thing I realized through this program. The second thing I realized was the importance of using the internet properly. In a lot of our intro classes, especially 501 and 502, we focused on the importance of the internet for educators, as well as netiquette rules for students to follow. I think I grew up in a time that the only way you could plagiarize was copying out of a book, which was very hard to detect. And now kids today have got all the resources and all the books at their hands and fingertips. So one of the first things I realized was the importance of using the internet properly when it came to this point. A few of the assignments that I really enjoyed producing were the web quests and the internet searches that I performed for my students. I did one with the Civil War and another one with the immigration of the early people coming over from Europe. And I think this allows my students to see that the internet is more than just a tool for social media, but it's a tool for learning. And I created rubrics that went along with this so they stick to the standards, and I even gave suggested sites to follow. I think that gives the students a lot more structure than just saying search the internet, find whatever you can, because you don't know the sources they're getting. I think before each of these internet searches, there needs to be some kind of talk with the students about proper use of the internet and how to search the internet properly, how to look for sites that are actually accurate and foolproof. I think that's one of the most important things I learned to pass on to my students, is that the internet is a great source when used properly, but also can be misleading if you do not know what you're looking for. So the second point I learned the most was how to use the internet properly when creating activities that are centered around the internet. The third thing that I learned the most through this program was the importance of collaborating. Now, there was many assignments and discussion topics where we had to collaborate or add on to others' comments or works, and I did appreciate that effort. It gave me a good insight into how to do that with my classroom more, and how to implement discussion and topics to make sure my kids are interacting with each other. I think one of the big worries about education moving towards more of a technology base is that we'll lose that traditional classroom aspect of interacting with each other. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I've learned through this program that you can adapt to that and actually make interaction work, even though you're at a distance or in a distant learning situation. One of the ways I've seen that is in this last class that I'm taking currently, which is in 523, where we've been doing an online course. My partner and I have been writing an online course for U.S. history, in which we will use in an online blended classroom, where we will still have the traditional classroom, but we'll blend it with a more technology base. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that just because you now have technology in the classroom does not mean that it just becomes a glorified pen and paper and internet searching ability. There needs to be an interaction. Our courses need to change. It can't just be the same class, but only a few things switch over to technology. We need to find a balance between using technology in the classroom and using it effectively in the classroom. And I think through using like collaborative tools like Google Drive that we've used a lot in this classroom, I've seen how I can add comments or edit or peer even edit on assignments of my students. I've seen how they can interact with each other by using Google Drive to create a presentation even though they're distance learning. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can use and collaborate still even though we're at a distance. And I think that even means we can even extend it even into the international and even other areas of the United States, and we can collaborate across different fields. I think that's the beauty of moving towards a more online education, and one of the things I've really grasped and had my view broadened through this program. The last thing I'd like to mention that I got out of this program was the ability to start online writing my own courses. I was offered a job throughout these courses at the local university to write a few of their courses. And having had this background through the EdTech Masters, it really helped me see the importance of writing certain assessments, evaluation, how I managed it, and how I used technology in those courses. I was very grateful to be able to have the opportunity to write two courses. Now they're still kind of in the works and they're not definitely complete by any means, but I definitely got the start in the idea of how to write an online course. I wrote one for world history and US history, and I was able to see the importance of planning out timelines, deadlines, objectives, how to have assignments that meet those objectives, how to use a flow chart to see the progression of the learning, and especially how to assess and evaluate whether this program was successful. I had the opportunity to design one that I had to have multiple surveys from past and present students to see how they used the site. It has allowed me to think a lot about my own education. I currently have a blog in my classroom, and it's made me see of the ways that I could take that blog to the next step and the next level, to become more interactive, to have assignments and quizzes that they will use on the site, as well as how to submit assignments online. So I was grateful for the opportunity, especially since our school is considering a 1-to-1 ratio where we will be giving students their own devices in the future, and to kind of having to convert our classrooms into a more blended classroom. So I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to be a few steps ahead and to have seen that. And those 2 assignments, especially creating those online courses, have really helped me see that online courses do not have to be super complicated, but they need to adapt to the technology and the resources we have, and that can actually in the end save the teacher a lot of time and help the students take the learning beyond the traditional classroom setting. In closing, I just wanted to kind of give an overall reflection of my experience. I felt really I didn't know really what to think when I first got into the program. I was excited about the technology aspect, but I had no idea the extent to which I would have learned. I am grateful for all the little tools. I could list off tools and apps and applications that I've used already in my classroom. And that is something that I've appreciated about the program the most, is that I was able to quickly adapt and bring these things that I was learning into my classroom. And I saw an improvement in my kids' learning, even simple assignments. And it made me kind of inspired to try this throughout my classroom more often with just other assignments. I've seen that as I've used technology more in my educational experience with myself as well as with my students, my learning has increased. And I've used tools that even I'm familiar with and that the students are even more familiar with. And that has kind of made them excited to do assignments that they are not used to and that are kind of different. So I was grateful for this experience because it really taught me that education isn't going anywhere, and it's something that we need to adapt to and learn to use in our students. So I'll be grateful because this is a program that I actually felt that right away I used, and I am grateful that I chose this master's as my program.